Hello again. Welcome back. Today I'm going to do a video talking all about grief. So I just thought I'd sit down and chit chat with all of you. And I guess I'll talk about my experience with grief and then just some things that I've learned about grief, I guess, through my experience. And hopefully this helps someone. So let's get started. I've kind of talked a little bit about grief in each of my videos and how I was affected emotionally, I guess, after each of them, but I think that it all kind of contributes and plays into like a bigger picture of my whole grief experience, I guess. And it's not over, because I think it's just gonna keep going for a while. I think grief just kind of goes for a while. I don't think you just wake up one day and you're done, you know? I don't think it's like that. So I guess I'll start with how I kind of, like, some of the major ways I felt after. Grief is always taught as there's stages of grief. Like, I remember in a bunch of my college classes, like, learning about the stages of grief and how you just kind of go from one stage to the next. And I don't think that's really an accurate description of grief, because I don't think that there's like certain stages and it's like, oh, you hit these 8 steps and then you're done and then your life is back to normal. Like, it's not like that at all. Everyone has their own way that they need to grieve, because everybody's different. Everybody's had different life experience and each person needs to grieve in their own way. And so I don't think it's like there's certain steps you need to go through or there's a certain way that you can expect it to happen. Like, I don't think it's like that at all. I think for me, initially, the main thing that I felt each time was just like really sad. Obviously that I was miscarrying, or that I had miscarried. Second and third miscarriage, I feel like it turned a little bit more into like, well, I was sad obviously, but then I think it turned also into like confusion, like, why is this happening to me again? And just kind of like hopelessness, maybe a little bit of just like, it keeps happening, like, is it ever gonna get better? Will I ever have a baby? All that type of stuff. The third time, I did feel like I had, like, the first time I just remember being like so grateful after the first miscarriage that I didn't feel any like anger about the situation. The third time I did feel, I think, a little bit of anger in moments. It wasn't like that was the only thing I was feeling or was consistent or anything, but I think I felt a little bit angry that it was happening again. But it quickly, like, the anger quickly faded. But that's just me. Like, I'm not saying if you feel angry after going through something like this, there's something wrong with you. I'm not saying that at all. This is just my experience with grief and the way I felt. And that's just my story. It's not yours. So however you have to grieve is okay. Like, just grieve the way you need to grieve. That's really the main thing about all of this, is just let yourself grieve however you need. I think mixed in with the sadness, there was also a little bit of like shock and sadly / strangely / I don't know. I felt like every time almost like a tiny bit of relief once it actually happened, just because it's so like scary and you don't know what's going on when it's happening, and it's painful, and it's just like, once you know that it's going to happen, you just, this at least is how I felt, I just kind of was like, I just want it to happen. Like, I know it's coming and I just want it to happen, because I don't want to like just sit around waiting for it anymore. So there was almost like this small bit of relief after it happened, knowing that like it had happened and I didn't have to wait for it anymore, and then I could start picking the pieces of my life back up, I guess, is kind of how I felt. After the first miscarriage especially, I just did not want to do anything that made me feel normal, because I felt like I deserved to be sad, and I didn't want to do anything that made me feel like my life was normal or that this was okay, because it wasn't. And I didn't want to do anything that made me feel normal. I didn't want to go back to work. I didn't want to go to church. I didn't want to clean the house. I didn't want to make dinner. I didn't want to do the laundry, like nothing. I just didn't want to do anything that made me feel normal. I just wanted to sit and cry, because I felt like I deserved to do that. And I did, and it's fine. Like, I did sit and cry. I also knew that I needed to do things that were normal, because I couldn't just stop my life and never go back to normal. And I didn't want, like, in a way I did want to just like sit and cry for the rest of forever, but also I didn't want to be like that. I wanted to feel happy again and things like that. I just remember the first time being especially like, I did not want to go back to work, and I just was like, so just like, I couldn't do it. Like, it was just like so scary. And I think the main reason why I didn't want to go back was because I was worried that if I did anything that made me feel normal, that I would forget everything that had happened. I didn't want to forget any piece of it. Like, I just wanted to remember it so vividly. Like, I didn't want to forget anything, and I thought that if I did anything that made me feel normal or was normal, then I would forget everything that had happened. I honestly felt like I would forget, which now looking back, I'm like, how could I ever forget this? But in the moment, that's what I felt. I thought I was going to forget it. I also didn't want anyone to see me happy. I didn't want people to see me smile. I didn't want people to see me laugh. I didn't want them to know that I could do those things in a way, because I didn't want them to think that I was okay with this happening, because that's not how it was at all, and that's not how I felt. Inside, I was still like dying inside, but just because like I could laugh, I didn't want someone to think that that meant that everything was fine. And eventually I just came to this realization that I did not want to just be sad the rest of my life, even though I did in a way. And so what that really came down to looking like, I guess, in my life was just like, which I've mentioned this before, I just wanted to let myself grieve when I needed to grieve, to be sad when I needed to be sad, and then to also let myself be happy. Like, I did not want to be sad the rest of my life. It's always hard to think back and look back on the memories of everything and know that it didn't come to be the way I thought it was going to be, but I don't want to be sad the rest of my life, and that's really what it came down to. It honestly was just like, I came to the point where I just told Matt that I felt that way, that I like didn't want to do anything normal, but I wanted to be happy, and like telling my family, things like that, and just having people that I felt comfortable with, that if I felt like I wanted to talk about everything, I could, but I didn't feel obligated to tell them everything. And also just having people that could tell me, like, it's okay to be happy. Like, it's okay if you feel happy. And people that could tell me it's okay if you cry. Like, because it is. That's just how it is. And that's still how it is. For the most part, I feel like I can be happy and, like, live my life. But I still, at least multiple times a week, will just cry or just get really sad about everything. And that's okay. This is still grieving. And it's gonna go on for a while, I'm sure. And I don't know if it ever really ends, because I think there will always be circumstances that come up where it feels like you are restarting the whole process over again. Where it just feels like you're put right back in that same exact spot of grief. I just want to stress the importance of like making sure you have people in your life that you are comfortable talking to. And that doesn't mean comfortable talking to you about your whole situation. That can mean just someone who's a real friend. You know, I've had so many just such good friends that I know I can tell them about my experience, but also that they're not expecting me to tell them anything. Like, I don't feel obligated to tell them. I can tell them on my time frame, I guess. Like, whenever I feel comfortable telling them, I can. And just to feel like there were people invested in the situation also, and that are like take you as you are kind of thing, and they just let you take your time to get through the situation. I felt like that was a lot of mumble jumble and very disorganized, and I'm sorry about that. I am trying, I'm like putting my thoughts together as I do this kind of a little bit, because I want it to be genuine and real and not like scripted or anything like that. Like, so this is real. This is how I am. I'm this scatterbrained always. There's just so many different components to this whole thing, and just trying to like say everything is just like, I know I'm missing things. But I am hoping that the main point comes across, that it's okay to grieve, and it's okay to feel whatever you need to feel in whatever moment you need to feel it. And to just like own it, I guess. Just always realize that people are going through things and that they're handling it the best way that they know how. And let's just not judge each other, you know? Like, let's just be nice to each other and not judge people in their experiences, because it's easy from an outsider perspective to say what you would do in a situation, but once you're actually in the situation, it's a completely different story. And grief is so great. But really, I think that going through the grief helps you be able to see the other side of like all the really good things. I feel like I haven't really talked a lot about like how my testimony and how Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ have helped me through this whole experience, which I just feel like I need to like give some credit there, because I couldn't have made it through without that. And really, it's played such a big role in everything that I've gone through. Something that really helped me through was scripture that talks about how we can't understand the good things without the bad. We have that much more potential to feel joy when we feel really hard things. I feel like that has helped me find good in this circumstance and to see, I guess, how it's changed me. Something else that really helped me through everything was lots of times when no one understands what you're feeling at all. No one. And there were so many times where I would just tell Matt, like, I just want someone who knows exactly how I'm feeling to come and sit and talk with me. And, like, I can just tell them how I'm feeling. But the thing that you quickly realize in life, and especially in the really, really, really hard and awful moments, is that there's not anyone who's going to know exactly how you feel. But really, there is someone who knows exactly how you feel. And Jesus Christ knows exactly how you feel. And Heavenly Father knows exactly how you feel. And that helped me so much to know that. And I feel like I gained such a stronger testimony and understanding that, like, Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ know exactly how I feel. And that there's no one else who really does. And they know it, like, precisely. And that, I mean, it just helps you know where to turn in the really hard times where you don't feel like anyone understands. For some of my thoughts on grief, you have gone through something like this or something else even, like everybody goes through grief in life. It doesn't have to be in relation to pregnancy loss. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on grief and I guess their experiences. This is not meant to be a how to go through grief video. Like, I'm not a prime example. I'm just sharing my experience. So don't take this as like, okay, I'm gonna follow that and that's now my steps of grief, because grief is not like made up of steps to be done with it. It's just like the tide in the ocean. It goes out and then it comes in and it's just kind of everywhere. So important to grieve with your spouse and to let your spouse grieve also and realize that they need to grieve too. I think I want to do a whole video on this because I think that it's interesting to have the spouse's perspective, but I think a lot of people focus on the woman or the mom in this situation just because they're the one who like actually had the miscarriage happen to them, but the baby belonged to both people in the relationship, so I mean the spouse grieves too. And I think it's important to just be aware of how you're feeling and how your spouse is feeling and be willing to share the way that each of you is feeling with each other so that you can help one another out. And I think this is like totally meant to be like something that just divine, is that I feel like in my hardest moments are the times when like Matt can be really strong and like strong for me, and then in the moments that are the hardest for him, I feel like I can be strong for him. And it just works out that like I don't feel like there's really ever like a moment where both of us are having like the hardest time and there's neither of us is feeling like strong in that sense, I guess. So that's just totally something I think that's meant to be. So but I just think it's really important to grieve with your spouse and not by yourself. Tell me your thoughts on grief. I want to know. See you later, alligator.